Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special episode of Rooted Recovery Stories. My name is Patrick Custer, and I'm the National Director of Alumni for Promises Behavioral Health. We're so glad you're here today and hope you join us for this entire hour of recovery stories. We are live.
Love Facebook.
We're a number of people.
The opportunity to share.
She's one of our own. It has been
They aren't like
parts to your story that I think. That's awesome. You found healing. You found
until I got so bad.
Can't wait for her to share the different aspects of your story and what awesome.
Right.
All right, welcome to Rooted Recovery Stories. This is Patrick Custer, and again, I'm your host. We are so glad that you're here with us for this hour, and today we've got a special guest, Brandon S. from Nashville, Tennessee. We're broadcasting live here from our corporate office in Brentwood. So thanks, Brandon. I'm so glad you're here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Patrick. Like I said, my name's Brandon. My sobriety date is October the 21st of 2016. I am an only child. A lot of my story is a lot of me literally probably almost being enabled to death. Not any fault of my parents. I would be the epitome of what you would call like a black sheep in my family. There's no history of addiction. I don't think anybody, even in my family lines, has ever even been to treatment besides me. And I say this because my dad, the way he grew up completely dirt poor. He was the youngest of 7 sisters and a brother. And he ended up doing pretty well for himself in life and wanted to give me and my mom all the advantages he never had. So saying that, like, there's no trauma in my life, no growing up, no history of abuse or anything like that. But I guess the first time early on when I noticed I was different, I guess was in the first grade. I remember them putting me on Ritalin and things like that because I can't sit still. I am still that way today. I have such a hard time. Like, I constantly have to be moving. So that being said, but I remember my mom, she saw it changed me. So immediately she took me off because I remember they tried to hold me back in kindergarten to keep me from passing the first grade because I literally could not sit still. So we got that out of the way. And I also remember being very sickly growing up. I had to go to the children's hospital a lot, all the time. I had asthma. I had to do all these tests. I mean, back when they did the little prick things on your back, I was completely allergic to everything. And I remember, like, this is probably the most traumatic thing. This probably wouldn't even be considered traumatic. Was I remember people would call me Tiny Tim, like, growing up, because I was pretty small growing up too. So that kind of affected me early on and stuff. But other than that, like I said, I cannot complain. I had every advantage in life. I never wanted for naught. I never think I even saw my parents fight one time. So
Interesting you say that. So when you looking back at your childhood and, family development and stuff, because, we talk about our family of origin and how it affects our recovery, our addiction recovery, all those things. And while some of us have a picture perfect childhood, when we look at the worldview our parents give us, tell us a little bit about what that was like for you. So as a child, were you exposed to anybody in your immediate circle that struggled with severe mental health issues or addiction? And, kind of what was that story that played out as far as, the veil that your parents either like held or, lifted in presenting to you the reality there? For many of us, that kind of affected and shaped our understanding and our way of dealing with it as we got older. So I'm just curious, like, what that was like for you. Was it all kept in secret? Was it hush hush? Or
if it was hush hush, like I said, if there was any addiction in my family, I was never aware of it, ever. I mean, my parents, my dad if I had to describe my dad, he's a good old boy, yeah. Does everything himself, doesn't want help from anybody. Like, he is a man's man, can fix anything. Like, he can do everything himself. And And me, I wasn't so much like that, I think. Like, and I don't think because my whole life I compare myself to everyone. It's the whole thing of either I'm way better than you or I'm way less than you. Yeah. And that's a horrible way to go through life. And I don't even know where I got that, I look back in my life and see the way that like I would treat people and stuff. Like I would judge people by what they wore, what they drove, what kind of house they lived. And I don't know where I got that. Early on, I think it's the people I surrounded myself with. I feel like to some extent we are all products of our environment, to somehow, but like I can't pinpoint where exactly like it all went more extreme for me one way or the other. And I'll just go back to like my childhood. Like I said, it was amazing. I grew up playing sports, all that good stuff. Never had anything really bad until middle school. I remember the first time I took a drink. I remember the first time I smoked marijuana. It was out of a can. It was probably some crappy brick weed, and I probably would have told you I gotten high, but realistically I didn't. Yeah. Through that, marijuana was never really my thing. So I'll just go ahead into high school. I got a lot of stuff. We want to consolidate this. So in high school, like I said, pretty normal. Just drinking on the weekends, never any consequences. Like I said, I look back now, the way I treated people in high school and things. I remember after my first treatment center I went to, me and my dad went and picked up a U-Haul to move my stuff out of my townhouse in Florence for college. And I remember there's a girl at the front desk, and I don't know why I always go back to this, but I guess it was the first moment in my life where I realized like I was not a good person, and the picture I see of myself was an absolute lie. And we were checking out, and she looked at my dad and she said, "Is that Brandon so-and-so?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's my son." And she looked at my dad and she said, I'm so-and-so. I went to high school with him, but he probably would never know who I was because he would never talk to me. And I don't know why, but that absolutely like crushed me inside. Yeah. Like the way I go through life, just self-will. And it's like, everybody get out of my way. I do what I want to do when I want to do it. And, looking back, like I can see how, and I don't want to be that person anymore, And I'll just go ahead and when I got out of high school, like instead of, going straight to college, I was one of those guys, like I was going to go find myself. So I went on a tour with a jam band across the country, followed them around and stuff, and did all that good stuff. And this is kind of where, obviously I got introduced to the psychedelics, mushrooms, shrooms, all that good stuff, the acid. I remember I'll tell this quick story. So I was at Bonnaroo, the very first Bonnaroo. And I remember I was walking around, I just eaten a giant, like this white chocolate mushroom. And then somebody sprayed me with acid. After that, I went by the main stage and climbed up in a tree, got butt naked, threw all my clothes down, and was up there for 10 hours until the Manchester the fire department had to come get me down. They put me in a psych ward for a few days, but to me, it was just bad luck. It wasn't my fault. It was the guy that sprayed me's fault, like, I don't know if anybody's ever had bad trips and stuff, but like, I literally felt like I was melting into the tree. Like I never thought I was going to come out of it. But like I said, 3 days in the psych ward, brush it off, bad luck, go home, reset and I'm back out, and that's it, After that, pretty much, I decided to go to college. Obviously through doing this work and stuff, like I realize I have self-esteem issues and, I'm full of fear and I want to be a part of. So what do people do that are like that? Well, I joined a fraternity. That lasted about 6-7 years of my life that I was in college. Like I said, college is when my drinking really escalated and all that good stuff. I started getting DUIs, things like that, started piling up. And I remember through that, they were finally like, well, I think you need to get a job. And I was like, well, okay, so what does a good alcoholic and addict do? I go get a job as being a bartender, and through doing that, like, I started getting exposed to painkillers and things like that in the restaurant industry while I was going to school. And I'm one of those people, like I just went all the way up the ladder. It was never like just an instantaneous thing for me. So doing that, I remember I got introduced to pills and painkillers. And I remember the first time I took them, like I didn't like them. Like I did not like the way it made me feel. It gave me a headache. But everyone else was doing it, and I want to be accepted. I want to be liked. So what do you think I do? I just push through. And through doing that, it was one thing led to another. Next thing you know, I need them all the time to work. You know, I remember detoxing the first time, like, what's wrong? I thought I had the flu, you know, like, and all that stuff. And then it just, like, I started out small and it just kept getting worse. At the same time where I was going to college, where I was able to bartend that, I remember I somehow had been hooked up with this football player whose aunt worked on some assembly line in Birmingham, and he was bringing back just buckets of the original OCs back to Florence and stuff like that. And I was no deal or anything. I literally just used to make myself happy. And I don't remember too many things in my life, but I remember the day when they took those, like, off the shelf and the fear I had in my body. Yeah. You know, like, I was scared to death because I didn't know what I was going to do. And for the first time in my life, like, there's always these lines, I think, in my life that I said, like, I'm not going to cross, like, I won't do this, you know, like, I knew the stereotypes that came with IV drug use. Mm-hmm. But at this point in my life, like, everybody knew what I was doing, you know, like, I'm literally working, you know, my classes are slacking a little bit. You know, I got to have water with me because I talk real fast. So you know, you got to remind me to come up for air, Patrick. Yeah, so,
all right.
So, like I said, like, I'm going to classes, I'm doing all this stuff. And I remember the stereotype, like, when you start talking about heroin users and meth use, like, these are the words that people are, like, hiding their kids from, you know, like, it doesn't carry very well, and the stigma that comes with it, you know. But I remember that instantaneous feeling I got when that needle went in me for the first time. And I can count since that day one time that I ever, like, took something orally or anything like that again. If I could not put in a needle, I did not want it. Speeding up, I remember it was me and my girlfriend at the time for college graduation. I remember we went out to eat with her family. My family was there. We were both nodding out at dinner. 2 hours later, her family showed up, put her in treatment. I think her family called my family. 2 hours later, my parents showed up, and that's when I started my first treatment. And since that day, my entire life, until I got to Tennessee in 2016, has been jails, institutions, and treatments. Mm-hmm. I don't say this proudly, but I've been to about 28 treatment centers all over the country. I'm one of those people, like, I just always like to pick and choose what I wanted to do in recovery. You know, like, I'm here to say this time, like, I don't know what works. I try to look at my recovery like it's like this piece of the pie, right? Like, and, like, it has to be, like, sponsorship, going to meetings, like, being of constant service, living by spiritual principles, you know, like, having a sponsor of my own, you know, like, literally I have to live this way of life. And for the first time in my life, I have not taken my foot off the gas, so to speak, to find out what happens when I stop doing one of these things because there's nothing worse than, you know, my heart breaks for the people that have been to multiple treatments and stuff, because I get it. That feeling of hopelessness, that feeling of walking in a treatment center and the first question somebody asks you is, what's going to be different this time? I don't know, you know, and I don't know what was different this time in my life. I know I walked up those steps. It's never easy, full of fear, you know, like I said, when I got to Tennessee, and I remember thinking myself, but for the first time, like I wanted something different. You know, I told people that before I got here that, like, I hated the guy that I saw in the mirror, and, like, I just couldn't stand myself. And that was true. But the truth is, like, I came to Tennessee because I had 4 felony warrants for my arrest and a reward for my whereabouts on Crime Stoppers. That's why I ended here, because that's what I do. I run from all my problems. You know, and I'll just back up a little bit. Like I said, so after that, I go to my first treatment center, typical insurance-based treatment center. You know, I learned a lot. I had no idea of anything about recovery, anything about AA, anything about any age, you know. I ended up getting a sponsor and all that stuff when I got out of there. I think I worked all the steps to the best of my ability that time. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I remember my sponsor at the time, he ended up relapsing. He had overdosed, and his girlfriend had found him with the oxygen cut off to his brain. He came out with the mind of a child. Wow. And I remember it left a bad taste in my mouth because my home group at the time almost used him as a martyr. Like, they would take him around, like, look at this miracle and stuff like that. Like, I would have told you that then, looking back, like, I already had 1 foot out the door. You know, I was barely going to meetings, you know, the prayer, everything that I know that works had stopped, you know, and like I said, then Dad he helps out, gets me a pretty good job. I start working there, and this kind of starts really my like treatment tour. Obviously, I'm not going to get into all of them. I remember nodding out at work and things like that, and people noticing it. And I guess they got tired of me nodding out on their multi-million-dollar equipment, so they'd send me to treatment. If that was my story, people would send me to treatment. I would get by on my likability long enough, because I was a hard worker. I always have been. My dad instilled that in me. But like I said, I could just never maintain. There was no longevity of anything I'd ever done in my life. And so that starts that, and eventually I get actually job after job after job, and I would go back to bartending. I would go back to these jobs, and I knew that wouldn't drug test, they wouldn't do this. And it was like this endless cycle. I've tried rapid detoxes in Miami, methadone, Suboxone, you name it. I've tried everything to get sober in my life, everything but just literally just letting go and let another man try and tell me what to do, And like I said, I won't go into too much of the stories. I can sit there and tell you a story for days about how long it is, but we all know what it looks like out there, And so I will say this. I look back, like I was saying, I was at my first treatment center, and I remember I was at an IOP program, and my parents got a phone call saying that the cops were at their house, and the cops had showed up at my parents' house with a battering ram, ready to bust it down. My neighbor stopped it. They told him that I wasn't there. I'd driven one of their other cars to Huntsville to go to an IOP program. And so what had happened was somebody had wore a wire on me back in college. And fast forward 3 years later, they come in to arrest me for distribution of a controlled substance within a school zone and all that stuff. Because I lived right by the university. So through doing that, for the first time in my life, I was sober. Of course, what happens? Dad bails me out, which happens so many times in my life. It's just a constant theme for me. Brandon gets in trouble. Brandon catches charges. Dad pays him off. Brandon gets bailed out. No consequences. Well, why would I stop using drugs if I have no consequences, right?
Absolutely.
I have to have consequences for someone like me to want to change and do something different. So, like I said, that all happens, and that pretty much started my I would say my criminal records and things like that is when that stuff happened, and I started doing good for a little bit, and things would take care of themselves. And that's my MO, get sober, get things back, get the car back, get the job back, get the trust back, get her back, or whatever it might be, at the time, I know now that none of that stuff matters. I have to do it for me because the new wears off of those things. And internally, I'm left with me, who's done no work on myself. And when that happens, it tells me in the literature, once again, I will be faced with a choice to drink, and I will have no defense against it. That defense must come from a power greater than myself. And that's it. I never realized that I had no foundation to fall back on. And that's the difference today when these problems happen in my life. My first thought is to not pick up a drink and not pick up and use, and that's just kind of how I look at it today. I will say this, this year of my sobriety has probably been the toughest that I've had, because it's really easy for me to do this stuff when things are going my way.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do this stuff when my life is falling apart and I am in the middle of it. It's easier for me to tell you well, you need to do this or you need to do that because I'm not emotionally attached to your problems. When I'm in it, it is so hard for me to take suggestions. And that's just what I try to do. When stuff's not going my way and stuff, I try to redouble my efforts, and usually it works out pretty good. But the problem is, I want results immediately. I live my life on impulse and emotion.
Instant gratification.
Yeah, that's what I live for. And nothing by doing this stuff makes me feel good instantly. It has been a process. And I choose to do Alcoholics Anonymous. That's my choice. I've tried everything. I've tried CA, NA, HA, you name it. I probably qualify for every A out there. Recovery is not so black and white to me today. If your life is getting better for what you're doing, then who am I to question it, right? I don't care. So saying that, like I said, so I'm doing AA. I'm going by, my life's getting better. But I want the promise that if I do these steps or if I go to treatment, like everything's going to fix it, right? Like that's going to fix it. Like, oh, I'll just go to treatment. That'll fix everything. You know, like I'll do the steps, but I'm not going to be honest. I'm not going to be open-minded. There's going to be no willingness in me. You know, that's what I'm talking about, that whole picking and choosing thing, you know, and that's what I wanted. The only thing that me working in a program of recovery and me working steps is the fact that the obsession to use and drink will be removed from me. And that has happened. That's it. It doesn't promise me that I'm going to be happy, that things are going to go my way, you know, like that this is going to fix me, because that's what I want. You know, like I don't want to have to do work. Like I don't want to have to like meet everything in the middle. I want everything given to me today. I know I jumped off track a little bit, but I'll go back to the treatment center stuff. Like I said, so this kind of started all that. You know, I was put all over the country going to treatments and stuff. Like, we'll skip all that. And I remember, and it was 2015, December the 29th. Me and my girlfriend at the time, she checked in treatment one day. I checked in treatment the exact same day because we were going to do this together. You imagine how that worked out, you know. Fast forward.
Was it the same place?
No, she was in a women's facility, and I went to a men's. Yeah. You know, we can imagine how that worked out. True story, though, she's actually still sober today. Awesome. You know, from that, and I did not make it that time. You know, and I think that's what I needed at the time. Like I said, everything that ever happened in my life, there was always something to hold on to for me. And when I got out of that time, like there was. Like I said, I would go to these treatment centers. I would get along with my likability. They would give me chance after chance. I would kept slipping up. You know, I would go get jobs, you know, all these things, you know, and life would just keep like crumbling, like almost kind of through my fingers. And I couldn't understand why, you know, I blame my life on the fact of self-sabotage, you know, but I look back now and like, how can you sabotage something you don't have? You know, like I never had a recovery. I never actually had a life to sabotage, like, you know, and that's one of the things I struggle with. And maybe this makes sense to you or someone, but you know, we talk about the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Like, but for me, like, I'll even take it a step further. Like, I know what my life looks like on drugs and alcohol every day. Like, I am comfortable in that life. Like, I know what I have to do to get it. I know, like, how much I need, yada, yada, yada. So, unfortunately, I don't know what my life looks like when I'm giving it over to someone else. Like when I'm having to show, and it scares me every day because I have this delusion that I'm somehow in control of things, right? Like, and I know that I have no control, you know, I know I don't. And when I just let go of the wheel, things just work out so much better than when Brandon gets his little hands and stuff and thinks he can move stuff, because this is an exhausting way to live, you know? And I'll go back to the treatment in Florence when I was there. You know, I tried, kept chance after chance, and this is when it really got bad that last time. Like I was talking about, I couldn't stand the person I saw in the mirror, you know, and somehow through another, I ended up at a treatment center here in Tennessee. My ex-girlfriend at the time, she got with my parents. I can't believe that they did it again. My dad looked me in the eye this last time. And he looked at me and he said, Brandon, he told me he took me out of the will because he was afraid I was going to murder him and my mom in their sleep. Wow. My mom looked at me and said that she would sell everything she would own if she could just keep me sober. By this time, my mom's on antidepressants, like all these things. Like, you know, she's up crying every time she hears an ambulance. You know, she thinks I'm in it. The norm became mom and dad getting calls. Brandon had handcuffed to hospital beds with them, the cops standing over me. By this time, I had flatlined twice. Originally got these 2 bands on my arm for the 2 times I flatlined, and I started putting holes all in them, so it kind of defeated the purpose. I'm not proud to say that I've overdosed 28, 30 something times. Like I would wake up randomly in gas station bathrooms, like not knowing how I got there, and I was okay with that. You know, like that was my life, you know, and I was just okay with it, you know. And you fast forward now, like, why am I still here? Like, why have I not, you know, in prison, like in, you know, passed away? Like, why have I been given all these chances? Like, what is my purpose in life? Like, and I don't know. And I think I'm still figuring it out today, but I know that it has to be of service to other people.
Yeah.
Like, that's it, you know, like we talk about in the book, like, and I wouldn't say I'm a big religious person, you know, I would say I'm a spiritual person today. I use God because it's a 3-letter word and it's all over the book. And that's just kind of how I view it today. But like, there has to be a reason of me living in his will and like living a life of service. And the thing that I try to do is to be of maximum service. And some days I do good and some days I do bad. That's just the way it is, you know? Like I was saying earlier, the problem is like when I put my hands in things, like that's when things start to go bad.
Yeah.
And I got here in 2016, mom crying, dad, you know, telling me this is it, son. And they would say that every time before, but I never believed it. Cause like I said, I knew that I could manipulate them. I knew what I had to do to get what I wanted, you know?
You had 27 times practice before that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it gets exhausting, right? And there I went, you know, walking up the stairs again, treatment again, you know, here we go again, you know.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my life, like, I'm going to be honest, like, I was tired. God, I was so exhausted. There was nothing left. I had left everything I had at the halfway house that I got kicked out of. Shocker. I had nothing left but some clothes and some flip-flops in the middle of October, and it was still cold back in 2016 when I got here, and a pair of flip-flops and some old clothes. And for me, that was the best thing to ever happen to me.
So when we think about some of the main things that make the difference in a lot of us who've been able to get sober and stay sober, it is radical acceptance, complete honesty, and being willing and taking action and asking for help. So clearly you had some of those steps down and what have you, but would you say that it was really this last time that you really stepped into that radical acceptance of, you know, because I hear you saying about how, you know, you had really lost everything and you were exhausted. So was that when you talk about like, this is, you know, got here, this is what happened. Do you think that's what it took, that exhaustion, losing it all, for you to finally accept that you had this problem and that you needed help and that you needed to do whatever it took, all the things you hadn't been doing?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, it talks, you know, that was for me, like, I had to lose everything to change my life. For the first time in my life, there was nothing to hold on to.
Yeah.
There was no her to go back to. She didn't want me back. My parents couldn't stand the sight of me. I had no friends left. I was all alone. I had nothing. So for the first time in my life, it was just like, all right. I remember sitting there at the treatment center I went to, you know, and me just telling my counselor at the time, I said, man, you know, you just get with my parents. Y'all figure out what y'all want to do with me, and I'll do it. And I think just opening that door just slightly, that little bit of willingness started the path, you know? Yeah. Like, I started doing the things that I didn't want to, you know? I did 30 days there. Then I did 60 days somewhere else after that. Then I went to a halfway house, you know? I did it, you know, like, and it's so funny. I was talking about this the other day, like how big my life's gotten today and the problems I have today. And if I could rewind and go back to like just living in that halfway house, being able to volunteer at that treatment center that I went through and stuff, like just going to meetings, walking around with my little government food stamp card, you know, the like simplicity. It sounds crazy. My life was so simple, but I can't see that in that moment. Yeah. You know, people look like I'm crazy now. And like, what a gift treatment is. Like, and if I could go back in there knowing what I know now, I would do it in a heartbeat. You know, I had it made then, you know, because you know, I was fortunate enough to, like I said, to go through the treatment center, to work at the treatment center for 3 years that I went through. And so through doing that, I got access to looking at, like, we did this thing, I remember, like, where it's like, what do you want to be in a year with your life? Like, in your cover, like, what do you want? Like, what are some things you want? You want a job, you know, whatever it is. Men, relationships with family, blah, blah, blah. I got everything I wanted in that year. It was so crazy to look at it on paper, to, like, where I was. But you can't tell me that in those moments. You know, right. You can't tell me like it's going to get better. Like if you just keep showing up. But for the first time in my life, I did, you know, and like I said, I got to work at the place, you know, there for 3 years. And that's what I love so much about this stuff. Like there's not too many lines of work You know, and you don't have to work in the treatment industry to see this stuff. You know, you see it all the time in the rooms and stuff like that, where you get to physically see people change. You know, like when people come in and you see them start changing their life, you know, they start, I'm not talking about they start looking better. You know, that's science. You know, you're going to start looking better when you remove drugs and alcohol from your body. You're probably going to have a little more money in your bank account. I'm talking about when you see someone change just as a person. They start talking different. They start walking different. Their shoulders are start held high. You know, you see this whole transformation of people. Like that is the gift of this, of working in this industry. And that's what makes me wake up every morning and try to do it. You know, like, one of the things I say every day before I walk into work is, you know, if I can't help this person, please let them find help somewhere, you know, like, because who am I to say that I know best? You know, what works for me may not work for you, but all I can go on is my experience and what's worked for me, you know, and through doing, like I said, through doing that, you know, and still, you know, getting a chance to live in the community, like giving a chance still to go to meetings. Like, this is not my recovery. You know, when I say that, like, you know, like you work in this industry all day and you give so much, like, and I didn't even know there was a such thing as mental exhaustion before I started working in recovery. I realized there is, you know, because you're taking on so much all day and then you get home and you have no way to disperse it. You know, you have no outlet for it, you know, and that's when, like, it's so prevalent for me today to make sure I'm taking care of myself outside of here. Like, am I going to meetings? Like, am I still calling my sponsor? Am I going on retreats? Am I taking time for Brandon? You know, am I meditating? Like, I have to do those things because I know what my life looks like when I don't. You know, like it gets bad and it can get bad really quick. You know, it's so funny. Like, I used to, like, relapse has been such a part of my story, obviously, and things like that. And, you know, I used to, like, say, you know, like, I used to tell this story where I could literally be at a stop sign, you know, I could go right and go to the dope man's house or go left or go to a meeting, right? Like, I'm going to choose left every time, you know, and I would say that, but relapse was never just a thought for me to wake up one day, like, today's the day I'm going to burn my life to the ground, right? Like, it's a process, you know, and it was always certain things for me. Like, and the first thing you always go to me is that contact, whether it be prayer, meditation, where that's the first thing to go for me every time. And then usually it was always, I would stop calling a sponsor or something like that because he probably gave me some assignment that I didn't do anyway. So I didn't want to talk to him and hear what he was going to say to me, right? And then lastly, it was always like meetings and stuff because, like, I think I'm important enough. If you see me, if you think you know what I'm doing, then that means I'm doing good, right? So... And then you remove those things, and not too long later, like, everything falls apart, and Brandon's wondering how he got back in treatment again every time. So, like I said, through doing all these things, like I said, this whole thing for me with sobriety and recovery has been a process. And through doing that, man, like, the relationship I have with my family today, like, for them to go through stuff, like the things that have happened to me in my life, and for me to be able to show up for my family and stuff, like, I know it means the world to me today. To hear my mom say, like, you know how I know you're doing good, Brandon, is because you walk with your shoulders up. Apparently, I used to walk around like my shoulders down all the time and things like that. Like, and I'm not too good looking out there. I think I weighed 128 pounds soaking wet. When I got to Tennessee, I get these dark black circles under my eyes. Like, but in my mind, you can't tell me that because I'm so delusional. I'm looking in the mirror like, you're welcome, ladies. Like, thinking I look good, you know, like, and I can't see the difference, you know, like, that life seems the only normal one to me. But like I said, the life I have today, the fact that I get to go, I have a choice today of whether or not how my day goes, like, that has been given back to me. Like, if I go throughout my day, like, being loving, being tolerant, meeting everyone with that, that's what I get back, you know? Like, I hear people all the time, well, I had a bad day and stuff. Like, I'm so thankful that today, like, I don't have bad days. I mean, being honest, like, I just have bad moments. Like, it's up to me. I somehow look or try to look at every day like it's this, like, blank canvas, you know, like, and I can paint whatever I want on it. You know, it's up to me. Like, that is one thing that I have regained, you know, I have regained that choice, you know, and it's, like I said, it's through doing this stuff. And some days it's easy and some days it's not, you know, like I said, it's showing up, it's doing things that I don't want to do all the time, you know, things that, like, I may not see the value in it, but, you know, when, like I said, when I'm taking suggestions, when I'm doing things that I don't think's best, because obviously Brandon doesn't know what's good for him. when Brandon runs the show, Brandon gets put back in treatment every time, you know? So I guess that's, is there some other stuff I need to talk about?
No, man, that was so thorough. But I'd say the last thing I wanted to ask you about is what would you say to somebody watching who is maybe in the same shoes as you, in the middle of what seems like an endless cycle of relapse? If you could speak to that person, or the you know, back at number 21, 15,
Yeah.
you know, whatever time, is there something that you would say to that person that you wish you would have known, or advice you'd give at this point?
I think at the end of the day, it would be, you know, that I go back to, like, stop picking and choosing what you want to do. You have lost the right to run your life if you're sitting here in treatment. People that have their life together don't come to rehab. You know, you're here for a reason. You know, like, none of us got here by being son of the year, father of the year, you know, boyfriend of the year. Like, there's a reason why I'm sitting in this chair. And it probably has to do with me being that reason, right? So what am I going to do now? Like, don't give up. Like, this thing is 100% a process. You know, like, I try to look at it like, you know, like I said, I would always think that, like, just working the steps and stuff, and once I would do that, I'd be done, right? And that would make me happy. That would cure all this, and then I'm done. Like, it's this endless process. I know I hear a lot of time, it's like, you know, peeling back layers of an onion, you know, like, it's little by little, and it takes so long. And, like, don't quit, you know, before this thing, like, really happens in your life. Like, things will start clicking. You know, like, that's what happened for me. Like, things started making sense to me that I'd heard all the time, but I would never give them a chance to, like, click in, you know?
Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter how you feel right now, because the way you feel is not a fact. It matters what your feet are doing. You know, you show up, you go to meetings, you don't question it, you just do it. And somehow through doing this stuff, you'll wake up one day and be like, oh my God, like, I haven't thought about drinking or using, you know, like it's almost like this infectious thing, you know, like, you get these little hits like drugs and alcohol used to give me, you know, and it's through being of service, you know, like, what a concept, right? You know, and, like, I try to just instill that in people all the time. Like, that's what I want to tell them. Like, do not give up. Try this thing for a year. You know, give it everything you got. And if you're not happier and your life's not getting better, then just stop it. You know, like, you know how to get miserable. So go get miserable. You know, like, we're offering, you know, not me, doing Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever it is, you know, like, whether it be smart recovery, you know, like, whether it's a Buddhist approach, like, I don't care. Just go try something different, anything than what you were doing, you know, and don't give up. You know, like I said, some days it's just holding on until I can make it to the next day. That's you right. know, and hitting that reset button. And I can do that throughout the day, you know, and it's just an awareness, you know, like, I like to think today, like how I'm living is usually like how I'm sleeping. If I go to bed every night with turning this thing off right here, then I probably had a pretty good day. When my head hits the pillow and my head in between here, everything's just going insane, I probably did something not too good that day. Yeah. You know, but that's okay, right? Like, I made it through the day without picking up and using it. And some days that's the best I got, you know?
That's absolutely. You know, I just wanted to highlight something you said. It doesn't matter what you're feeling. It matters what your feet are doing. And, you know, we hear that a lot in the rooms of recovery. And, you know, I think it's pretty simple, but just to kind of expound on that, you know, for those of us who struggle with addiction, that means, you know, our lives for so long while we're out there our actions are based on how we're feeling, or how, you know, planning ahead to make sure at 3 p.m. this afternoon I don't start withdrawing or what have you. You know, it's all about, our entire life is framed around curating our feelings. And what recovery gives us, and I think something that, you know, you were getting at with, you know, the beginning of recovery, that change, that shift in psyche, is that I've got to start at just square one, push through discomfort and lead with just the action, and say, no matter how I'm feeling, I'm going to put one foot in front of the other through this discomfort. And then you start to get a little reward, and you can't see that forever. I usually call the forever concept. I couldn't think of the rest of my life never having a beer again.
Right.
I could not conceive that. But there's a reason why we hear that phrase, one day at a time, because truly we have to do that in addiction. When we're getting sober, we have to take it one day at a time, because we can't conceive the rest. I can't think farther out than that. Today I can. Years sober, it's possible. But though I would say though that the parallel between first getting sober, like you said, pressing through that pain, what are your feet doing, is that even though today I'm not having to press through learning and recovery lifestyle for the first time, or the discomfort of withdrawal, I automatically tend to fall back into my feelings. So not every day, but many days, I wake up in my feelings, letting them dictate how and what I'm going to do, what I'm going to show up for, what my attitude is going to be, and call it human nature, call it, ingrained in us as addicts, whatever the case may be. It's something that we struggle with. And for me, I have to keep that in check. You talk about having to continue working a program for the rest of our lives. That's one of the biggest things that I have to keep in check. It never goes away. Is that it constantly comes back that I want to get in my feelings and let that lead. So I thought that was really good what you shared, your whole story, but especially that. I think I know I identify so much with it, and I'm sure that our listeners can too. One final thought: if you're out there struggling, we've got information scrolling through the bottom of the screen for our website or phone number you can call if you want to anonymously, call and ask some questions, and talk to somebody like Brandon, and get some information about what treatment services are available to you, or what that might even look like. Don't let fear of the unknown keep you from taking that step. It's free. It's available to you, and we just hope you take advantage of it. We're here to help and happy to. So with that, thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate it.